Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted and privileged to welcome a very accomplished individual who has spent time in Bollywood, who's doing some amazing work in different fields, Anu Aggarwal from Mumbai, India. Anu, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here, and namaste, everybody, and hope you all are well.
Thank you. Anu is the founder of the Anu Aggarwal Foundation, where their focus is to maximize potential, raise joy and peace. She's also famously known, and I remember watching her years ago, as the Ashiqui girl. And she's an award-winning actor. She's trained and mastered in meditation. She's an ambassador of the UNHCR, one of the most influential women in Asia. And she's an author. And all of you know I'm very partial to authors. She's an author with a book, which is probably named after her name. And I hope I get it right, Unusual or Unusual. Anu, you can correct the spelling for me.
No, that's okay.
Anu, let's start talking about your foundation. Tell me about this venture and what was your motivation to start?
So, the thing is that we have to start with the fact of where the entire idea began. And that was, and I haven't written about this. I'm this is like now you're hearing it for the first time. I had an out-of-body experience during one of the surgeries.
Mm-hmm.
And in that out-of-body experience, when I saw the body from outside with little or actually no attachment to it, I realized at that time that basically we are all the products of love and compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I didn't want to enter the body. I did not recognize it. It was just a piece of mass lying there.
Wow.
And for me, I also realized then that in as much as there is joy, there is also no joy, and both are equal, and there is a middle path. And I then said, okay, and then this whole thing came to me and said that, look, you love the people have given you so much. I mean, I'm a young achiever, and I'll tell you something. More than anybody else, they say, wow, miracle Ashiqui, and before that a supermodel going, traveling all the world over, blah, blah. But I'll tell you something, I myself, I've been shocked with my life, but like sometimes positively shocked, but it always comes with its own baggage, because there's a lot to handle when you are in the limelight as well. And being a young person, it's difficult. But on the other hand, when I had this out-of-body experience, I just knew that I had to come back into the body and do something for the betterment of the world. And that's what my mission was. So that's how the idea of it.
Quite amazing. So, you work, and I was reading about you, Anu, you work in a very large number of areas. And I was wondering, how do you get the bandwidth to handle such diverse areas?
Let me tell you, let's start with me and go to my basic.
Yeah.
I mean, my bandwidth, I started off as a master's in social work, wanting to better the world when I did. And I turned a supermodel, and, I became an international person, and then I became a movie. So, if you see my life, and then I, left on the top, and then I went into Europe, and then became a sannyasi. Then I became a monk. I mean, so if you look at my graph, it's the bandwidth is massive, So I think that for me today, it's interacting and understanding diverse field of people and their, inclinations and even things that sort of hold them back. Even on a mental level, because I've studied that, and is something that when I love it, I love what I do.
Wow. Wow. And again, you speak about bridging the gap between self and super self.
Mm-hmm.
I know you were a supermodel. I know you were a superstar. But what is super self and how do you bridge the gap between the self and the super self?
Okay, I'm not talking about supermodel and
I know,
stuff.
I know, I know. I know.
I'm talking about super self as
Mm,
a self
mm,
that is omnipresent,
mm,
omnipresent, omnipotent, and is eternal.
mhm,
Now, that is a super self that I'm talking about.
mhm,
And when I say self, I'm obviously talking about the individual.
mhm,
So the individual is directly connected to the super self. And this is a knowledge that somehow or the other we don't get in the learnings that we do in our school and colleges. So
mhm,
we are pretty much like clueless that what our real connection directly is
mhm,
universally.
mhm,
And when the super self, and if you go back to Tantra, which is the oldest existing uh, science and
mhm,
philosophy,
mhm,
uh, it talks about the self, the individual,
mhm,
and the universe, and the togetherness, and the liberation meant the two of them getting together,
mhm,
and that's what Tantra aimed at.
mhm,
Now, if you see it today, we have, we talk about the microcosm and the macrocosm,
mhm,
you know. So those are your self and your super self.
mhm,
And when the microcosm realizes that it is very much a part of macrocosm, then all sorts of dualities vanish.
mhm,
And not only just that, like all the aggression, all the hatred, and
mhm,
all the jealousies, all of those kind of like heavy traits, which you could call negative, but I refrain from calling positive and negative because that is, very grounded terms now.
mhm,
But but when you see that those, because when I say
mhm,
that what is wrong with, let's say, being aggressive or being judgmental,
mhm,
let's not judge it. Let's
mhm,
not even judge that. Let's understand that that holds back our individual progress in life.
mhm,
Now, surely each person aims at progress, whether it's an achievement, whether it's an ambition, whether it's just life, everyday life,
mhm.
a better car, a better house, a better wife. No, I
Correct.
mean, a better. Yeah, right. So that is you. So that's what your life is aimed for.
Mhm,
And if that be so, then why wouldn't we train the mind to get into those traits which are going to speed our journey forward
mhm.
rather than holding it back and bringing it down, which the negative traits, the so called negative traits, do?
What an amazing answer. Thank you. So, your foundation, its byline is that you focus on maximizing potential, raising joy and peace.
Mhm.
Give me an example of the kind of work that you have been doing in the past.
So, I'll just give you a very simple example
Mm,
that first of all, I would like to say one line about, what is this raising joy thing? Now, the raising joy, again, going back to
mm,
my out of body experience, where I realized that intentionally, not even intentionally, we are made to be joyous.
mhm.
We come out of joy, each
Correct.
one of us,
Yes.
you know. But the whole thing of the Maya thing, that
Mm,
Maya has come and, that has been described also in the Veda,
mhm,
that when the Maya grips, it creates that veil on your understanding. And
mm,
you forget the fact that you are that joy and bliss, so to speak, you
correct.
know. So my entire thing was that, when I came back to the world after spending, 2 decades in sannyas and yoga ashram and in hinterland, uh, the one thing that really gripped me was that people in the world, because now I was looking at them not as a part of them, but
Mm,
as an outsider.
mm,
And when I was doing that, I understood that so much there was so much stress to begin with.
mm,
I mean, like it's even for people to smile normally is so difficult. You know,
Correct.
it's always like if you see like people, even like with all due respect to all my staff friends, but a lot of people, even their smiles are plastic, you
Correct.
know.
Mm,
So I when I came back and I said, like, oh God, we need to get, what do we need to do? What
mm,
do I need to do now that I'm here and I want to work for the people? First thing, I need to rid people of stress, which means it starts with relaxation. So first of all, and there are some very beautiful, simple techniques
mm,
which can get you to relax. So that
mm,
was one. The second thing was that when people relax,
mm,
they naturally start to feel the joy inside.
mm,
So, then they automatically start to become joyous. Now, when I started this foundation, my entire idea was that these were the two basic principles, and they anybody at any age
mm,
needs this, you know.
mm,
And I also realized that when you again, if you start to go into your super self,
mm,
then you are the same. Your mind, you're the same as anybody else, whether it's any caste, creed, part of the world, nationality, blah,
mm,
blah, right? So when I realized that there are some very, 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 very simple
mhm,
techniques that can start to, first of all, relax the person.
mm,
Secondly, make them laugh. There are
mm,
yogic laughters and there are other practices where people, and take them away from the world that they're in and their identification
mm,
with the world outside.
mm,
I am like a slum child, for instance.
mm,
I am this, my name is this, I'm a Muslim, I stay in Dharavi, my father has no money,
mm.
so all of that,
Yeah.
that identification, now that identification is actually what brings a person down.
Mm. Well said.
So if we can take a person away from that identification,
Mm,
and there are techniques, there's this, like, for instance, there's yoga nidra. There's a very deep yoga nidra which Swami Satyanand had done,
mm,
studied on, which is another story. He's written various books on it, and it's
mm, mm,
incredible because I woke up, because I was trained in teaching that. And when I woke up bedridden with no body consciousness
mhm,
or environmental consciousness, from coma,
mm,
I have started giving myself that technique, the yoga nidra, which is why that's how my healing actually began. And then the body started to move, and then I could move a little, and then I started
mm.
to do some other. So
Definitely.
this is what I'm teaching now with bringing the happiness and joy in people. And I could give you several
I'm sure.
stories.
I'm
I
sure.
could give you a story of like these children who are with HIV,
Mm,
and which is such an, it's a shocking. And I was so, like, I couldn't like eat for 2 days when I learned that children today, like a 3-year-old child could be born with HIV, and I just felt like, oh my God, like, what has he done to
absolutely.
get HIV, but so that's how, from generations to generations.
Mm,
And anyhow, so I realized that, the children, what they needed, I always do a study, and I do a sort of tailor-make a program
mm,
depending on their mindset. So I made a program for them and the children who were very, very, very depressed, especially, see, the children who are 3, 4, 5, 6, they don't know.
mm,
But the children above 10 or 9, they
mm.
start to realize what
They're
they are.
aware. Yeah.
And that starts to bring them so down. So
Mm,
then, so we did certain practices, and it's been so joyous. We've done about 2.85 lakh people up till now since 2014,
yes, sir.
and it's been so amazing, and that's what kept me going, was the fact
Mm,
that was having such remarkable, bringing about such a remarkable change in people.
mhm.
So yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. So, Anu, now let's move to another subject, which is mental wellness. And I know that you've done work in this area as well.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a very simple and basic question. Why is it that mental wellness is still spoken about in such hushed tones in India or in our society? And what can we do to change it?
The thing is, okay, the thing is, first of all, I mean, I would like to correct you here because mental health is an issue around the world.
Mm,
People are very cagey about it.
mm,
They don't want to talk about the fact
mm,
because, especially even your corporates and all, because they are scared that it may be taken negatively. They may lose their job.
mm,
You know. So the thing is that in India, of course, I mean, there has been. I worked on sexual repression when I was in 90s, yeah,
mm,
because and I actually endorsed a condom when I was in like
mm.
half of my training
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
But my entire thing was that let's have safe sex and let's have. But today I see that mental health is we are so cagey. We don't talk about things. We don't talk about a lot of things.
Mm,
We say what we are asked to talk, asked to say.
mm,
It's like a social restriction.
mm,
But as far as mental health is concerned, it is because of the fact that there is a stigma attached to it,
mm.
because of the fact that it's kind of taboo. You don't want to tell. Like if you have diabetes, you tell everyone knows you have
Absolutely. Yeah.
you know. So in my thinking, I mean, if I have a diabetes, if somebody has diabetes and can talk about it,
Mm.
why can't he talk about the fact that he has depression?
Correct.
And I think that what is really important is that we should all of us
Mm,
need to drop our judgment on this so that people can come out and encourage people and tell them that we are with them.
mm.
You know, just come out and talk about it. A lot of time, just talking about something cures it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So again, based on the work that you've been doing with the people who've had challenges of mental wellness, uh,
Yeah.
what are some of the symptoms that say parents need to watch out for?
Okay, now here is something that I very strongly feel that, the parents,
Mm.
first of all, um, they need to, before they watch out for the children, I think the parents need to watch out for themselves.
Okay. True.
Now, the point is this that, so this is what is believed in the ancient text that everything has energy, every thought has energy,
Mm.
and each thought percolates, it gets taken up by the air around you and percolates in the air around you.
Mm.
Now, if I have, as a parent,
Mm.
if I have anxiety
Mm.
about my job or about anything else, I, without wanting to, it is getting transferred to my husband, to my children, to my workers, everybody, because
Right.
the air carries it.
Mm.
Now, we as parents need to start to be aware and build our own awareness about how
Mm.
we react to things, because we show anger, we show our, whatever traits,
Correct.
children are getting affected by that.
Mm.
The second thing is that a lot of the times, parents, because they are not aware,
Mm.
they take their children's because and they also have like a status to maintain in the society.
Mm.
So a lot of the times they ask their children to be quiet about a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean the girls, for instance, even in your issues of rape and all that,
Mm.
I mean the girls are told to be quiet, don't
Correct.
tell anyone.
Correct.
You know, the
Correct.
point is that the parents are actually so responsible. And I don't mean to put anybody down or
No, but you're,
anything.
you're just, you're so right. I was speaking to someone who works in the space of, um, you know, child, child abuse. And they
Mhm.
were saying that almost 70% of abuse takes place inside the home.
Exactly.
And so you're absolutely right. People are told not to speak about it. Well said.
Exactly. So, the thing is that therefore, I mean, first of all, all of us need to start getting aware. And that's why, when I started, with my work I developed a module called Anusual, which is just a simple, sort of a capsule of little things, which I have learned and
Mm.
experienced for my own healing and wellness,
Mm.
and and for mental health, because I had I have PTSD, I had post-traumatic stress disorder
Mm.
from
Mm.
apart from the fractures and the paralysis and everything
Wow.
else.
Mm.
But because the doctors gave up on me. They were like,
Mm.
you know, we don't we don't think that she's even going to live.
Wow.
Forget about healing her fractures and wounds. So I started. Now I was left with nothing else but the mind, because
Mm.
I had a paralyzed. I had a body that didn't move.
Wow.
Nobody was there to help me.
Mm.
And luckily, I had started meditating 6 years before this.
Mm.
No, rather 8 years. 1991, I learned Vipassana
Mm.
after when I just become a star. And that really helped me cope with the madness, because Ashiqui was
I
huge.
know. I know. I know.
I mean, I was suddenly, and I was alone, and suddenly I was like flooded with
I
people,
know.
and I was like, suddenly I bought a house. I was 22, 23.
Mm.
Okay.
That's
So,
no, no. I mean,
so,
I
so,
remember you in Ashiqui so well. I remember uh,
so,
watching you. But Anu, no, I'd love to move to the next segment of our conversation, and that's your book. And in my introduction, I wasn't able to pronounce it correctly, but I think I'm going to ask you, how do you pronounce unusual or unusual or how? But tell me about
but
it.
the thing is that actually a journalist called me
Mm.
in one of my, in one, they made me a style icon, and they written an article on me, and it was called Unusual.
Mm-hmm.
So when I saw it, I was like, what is this? So you can call it unusual, you can call it unusual. It depends on you how you want to pronounce it.
Correct.
There's no thing on it. Yeah.
Mm. Okay. So tell me about your book and what was your hypothesis?
So it was just again with my healing, my healing began.
Mm.
Uh, Actually, my right arm was paralyzed because of a doctor's mistake in an operation.
Wow.
And after 3 years after my accident. So the thing is that I started to actually, and I had no memory of Anu. I had no
Mm.
memory of a past life. So I took that time to heal my arm. I started to read, and Anu was maintaining diaries. So, I've maintained diaries all. I write every day.
Mm.
I've been doing that since 11. My mother is right. So, I think it's the childhood habit to write a diary every night. And when this when I started to read the diaries,
Mm.
and then, to tie, I couldn't type, so I had to wear rubber bands on my fingers
Mm.
and to like press keys. And then I would press many keys at the same
Mm.
time because
Mm.
the fingers wouldn't move. The hand was paralyzed. So that's how I started to learn about Anu, and that's how I started to learn about wellness and how we can, because I believed I will be well,
Mm.
because I believe that we can do
Mm.
the undone. Anything is possible. There
Mm.
is nothing impossible. And because I believe that the whole key to it is compassion and love
Mm.
and positivity, and thinking of others in a helping way rather than in a wanting way and a needing way, you
Mm.
know. Uh, More like what can I give rather than what can I get.
Correct.
So I started to, then as I was starting, I said, like, God, now I have to convey this to the world,
Mm.
you know, that look. And when I started to heal,
Mm.
that look, anything is, I'm living example of this,
Mm.
anything is possible, anything. Just
Correct.
don't give up.
Mm.
Don't give up hope. Don't give up. Don't give up. So that's how the book actually began.
Amazing. Amazing. Anu, on that note of don't give up, I think we've run out of time. So I'm going to say thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for talking to me about your absolutely incredible journey. I mean, I think going back quickly to your own short career but such a successful career in Bollywood, I wonder if you'll ever think of doing a movie about your own life. I mean, it's such an inspiration. from your out of body experience to your accident to the way you've recovered everything to your meditation, 20 years up in the mountains. I think it's such a life well lived and such an amazing journey you've had. Thank you again for talking to me, and good luck.
Thank you so much. And listen, if you want to make a movie with it, and if you know anybody wants to make, please.
I wish I was in Bollywood, but
lovely talking to you. Thank you so much for inviting me, Ashiqui. Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.